When you think of Yellowstone, what are the things that come to your mind? For some, it's the geysers. For other, it may be the bison roaming the plains, or the plethora of mountains, rock formations, and waterfalls that adorn the park. All these things considered, most people wouldn't immediately think of the wolves of Yellowstone. Many people may not even know that there are wolves in Yellowstone, let alone how important they are to the park's ecosystem. What may surprise you, however, is that wolves have not always been present in Yellowstone. As little as 30 years ago, there were less than 20 wolves in the whole park. Almost every wolf in the park today is a direct product of species reintroduction that began in the mid-90s. In today's video, we will review the history of wolves in Yellowstone, why they nearly went extinct, how they were brought back, and finally, was wolf reintroduction a good idea at all? Before American settlers reached into the Yellowstone area, the wolf population was thriving. In the year 1872, the Yellowstone National Park was created. However, at that time, the park was very different from what it is today. There were no restrictions on hunting, and this meant that practically anyone could come onto the park's boundaries and kill as many animals as they wished. Wolves were a great target due to the negative perception by the people in the area. Farmers living around the park saw the wolves as a danger to themselves and to their livestock. Therefore, their extermination seemed like a very logical solution. We must remember that this was a very different time from an ecological standpoint, and people didn't think of how killing off one species would affect the rest of the ecosystem. Anyhow, between 1871 and 1926, virtually the entire wolf population of Yellowstone would be killed off through combined efforts between regular citizens, park workers, and even the U.S. Army. It wouldn't be until years later that the absence of the wolves would be seen. Now, before we talk about the effects of the wolves' extermination, we must understand the wolves' role in the food chain. The main food source of the wolves is elk, and the main predator of the elk are wolves. And before human intervention, wolf and elk population stayed somewhat balanced from what we can tell. When the wolves were taken out of the situation, the elk population skyrocketed. Now, at a quick glance, you might not see a problem in this. Yellowstone has more elk, and now farmers don't have to worry about their livestock being killed. What's the problem? Well, once the elk population started growing, their food sources started to deplete, and once the elk started overgrazing, they began to strip the forests of underbrush, which is a crucial food source of the park's small mammals, such as the beaver. The lack of underbrush pushed the beaver nearly to extinction. It also affected the other populations of small herbivorous animals. And in the absence of wolves, the population of coyotes grew as well. So in the absence of wolves, we began to see the whole ecological situation of Yellowstone begin to turn out of control. Eventually, all the ecological catastrophe began to be noticed by park scientists, and after much debate, the first batch of wolves were reintroduced in 1995. The 14 wolves were taken from the Jasper National Park in Alberta, Canada. They were introduced to the landscape slowly. First, they were put in a large outdoor pen where they were fed elk carcasses to acclimate them to what would be their primary prey. After a while, they were freed and began to thrive. As the numbers of wolves began to grow, changes were seen in the environment. The number of elk dropped significantly, and their feeding patterns began to change as well. Instead of being stationary and leaving the land they grazed barren, they began to move more due to the wolf presence, allowing the land they grazed to grow back. The shrubbery that supported the beaver population began to grow back as well, causing beaver numbers to spike. Since the wolves' reintroduction, the elk population has stayed relatively balanced as well. All in all, it seemed like the operation was a resounding success, which I would personally agree to fully. However, there are some arguments as to why wolf reintroduction was a bad idea. Let's investigate. The two greatest concerns regarding the wolves are related to the safety of livestock and park visitors. While it is true that some livestock in the surrounding area are killed by wolves, especially cow and sheep, it isn't truly that big of a problem, statistically speaking. According to The Truth, livestock loss due to wolves in the Northern Rockies represent less than 1% of all livestock loss. In regards to concerns for park visitors, wolves pose no more of a threat to them than local black and grizzly bears. The park stated in 2013 that no wolf has attacked a human in Yellowstone. All in all, wolf introduction has done wonders for the ecosystem in Yellowstone. It was truly a triumph by humanity when it comes to righting the wrongs that we have caused towards nature, and despite its criticisms, it has virtually no ill effects towards human life in the area.